Egypt in 1954 is in a rather difficult position. The new leader, Gamal Nasser, is a staunch young nationalistic army officer who's seen a significant amount of combat during the Arab-Israeli War and is fairly popular amongst the majority of the population, with the exception of the Muslim Brotherhood, whom Nasser thinks their religious agenda is incompatible with his nationalistic one. The country's major asset, the Suez Canal, is under foreign control. The land reforms are going to take some time to have significant economic benefits. The massive Aswan High Dam construction project, which had the potential to transform the Egyptian economy and initially had American support. This was later withdrawn when the Americans deemed that it was beyond Egypt's capability, which, considering Egypt's track record for large construction projects, lacked a little in imagination. In addition, there's the hostile nation of Israel. Nasser knows it's ready to take advantage of any significant weakness in Egypt. However, Nasser also knows that the location of Egypt is strategically significant to all the world powers, and if played correctly, this can be a great assistance to the new leader. At this stage, the Muslim Brotherhood tried to actually assassinate Nasser whilst he's making a speech about the British withdrawing their troops from Egyptian soil. The assassination attempt fails, and Nasser, who's been under fire many times before, remains calm and continues to speak, saying that he's willing to die for Egypt, and they should all be willing to die for Egypt as well. From this point onwards, both in Egypt and around the Arab world, Nasser's popularity reaches new heights, and the problem of the Muslim Brotherhood fades. With the British now leaving Egypt, it left a potential power vacuum which both the Americans and the Russians attempted to fill. Both the Russians and the Americans knew the strategic advantage of Egypt. However, due to commitments elsewhere, neither America nor Russia could send significant troops to the region. As a result, Nasser thought if he could play these two powers off against each other, especially with the backdrop of the Cold War, Egypt could benefit as a result. An example of this was when the Americans attempted to get Egypt to join the American-led Middle East Defense Organization, with the object of protecting the oil-producing countries of the Middle East. This wasn't popular with the countries of the region, and America thought to get Nasser on side, more would actually join in. So they paid him $3 million, which he took, then promptly refused to join. So whilst Nasser adopted a position of general neutrality, where it came to the two Cold War superpowers, this wasn't his only foreign policy position. He developed close ties with other nations in Asia, especially India, along with supporting independence movements in the French colonies of North Africa, much to the annoyance of the French. However, Nasser considered that Egypt's military position was relatively vulnerable, and they needed to acquire modern arms and equipment, preferably in very large numbers. Now, for once, American foreign policy was not supportive of Israel's current antagonistic stance towards its neighbours, since it wanted to be seen as even-handed to all states in the region in an attempt to stall the growing Russian influence in the Arab world. As a result, Nasser thought he might be able to acquire weapons from America. However, due to the militia known as the Fedayeen skirmishing across the border with Israel, America wanted assurances that weapons would not be used against Israel. This, along with other conditions, made the deal impractical. So Nasser approached the Russians, first as a means to actually pressure the Americans into supplying him, but later in desperation to upgrade what was basically World War II surplus British weapons he was currently generally using in his army. Now this became more of an issue as the French started shipping large amounts of weapons to Israel. The Russians now funneled substantial arms shipment to Egypt via Czechoslovakia, which included jet fighters, bombers, and relatively modern tanks and armoured vehicles. The race was now on to see who could arm and train their military the quickest, Egypt or Israel. It's now a case of who would attack whom and when.